Hello, buddy. Welcome back to Tin Man Score Channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor, today, kicking off my Night Time Spooks marathon for you guys. And the video I'm reacting to is titled 3 True Deep Web Horror Stories of Rain Sounds. So without further ado, I'm going to turn these lights off, move the camera up here for you guys, and let's get this reaction on the road and in the bag, shall we? Okay, here we go.
A couple of years ago, when I was in high school, I was hanging out with some of my friends, and they started talking about the deep web.
Oh boy.
My friend George had been on it before, and he was telling us things about it. We talked about the deep web for the whole lunch period at school, and I started to get really curious about it and to give it a try sometime.
No, don't do it. At that point, I'd be like, all right, can we change the conversation? Because all the stuff you're talking about finding on there is making my stomach turn, especially at lunchtime. Good lordy. I don't know why the kids have to be so obsessive about the deep web. Have you heard stories about people going on there and what they find? That should be enough to deter you, but nope. They want to experience it themselves. Well, I pray for everybody that does do that, because it might get ugly.
Later that day, when I got home from school, my curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to try to access the deep web. I was texting with George, and he told me the browser to get and what to do. I followed his instructions, and I was able to get on. Then, I looked up some deep web websites to visit. The very first one that I went to was a screen that was all black with a small icon on the upper left corner. When I clicked on it, it took me to a web page filled with images with no context. Some of the images were animals, like a fish or a bear. The others were a bunch of random objects. I clicked on the fish. Then the page started loading. It took a long time to load. I would say a good 30 seconds or so. Once it was finally done loading, I saw my face on the screen. It was coming from my webcam.
Oh boy, I knew it. Once people get on the deep web and they click on something, you never know if a hacker might be already waiting for you to be on and they can activate your webcam once you click on something. At that point, I'll be trying to back off of that site and turn off your computer all the way, even the camera, and delete that Tor browser, because you don't want whoever is on the other end to recognize who you are and then try to locate you.
I quickly scrambled to find a blanket from my bed and covered the webcam with it. The screen then went black. I was relieved to see, but then some text started to appear on the screen, getting typed out. The first thing said my name, but not just my first name, it was my full name, first, middle, and last. This really freaked me out. Then, to my horror, more of my personal information started to be typed out on the screen. It said the school I attended, then my phone number, and then the state and city that I lived in.
I would like to know how in the world them hackers are able to know where you live at once you click on the image or link that they leave. Unless they have a device that's hooked up to their end that automatically tracks where the source of the computer is at. I mean, that's the only thing I could come up with. But yeah, that'd be sketchy. Let's just see what happens next. I'm getting kind of curious now.
I couldn't take it anymore, and I went to close out of it. But when I tried, I couldn't. My mouse was frozen. I tried pushing Control-Delete many times, and nothing happened. I began panicking and pressing random buttons on my keyboard. I went to turn off my monitor, but nothing happened still. Then I pushed the power button on my computer, and still nothing happened. Finally, I went to the wall and unplugged the power source, which was an extension cord plugged into the wall. Everything turned off at that point. I sat there in shock for several minutes before plugging my computer back in to delete the browser. Thankfully, I had been planning to get a new computer for a while, and I got one shortly after. I will never forget that experience with the deep web.
Well, thank God he did not have no encounter with whoever was on the other end and typing out all of his private information. But yeah, this is why people, including me, say, do not go on the deep web, because if you click on a link, picture, or something else on there, these hackers will know how to find out where you live, and they probably threaten you of coming to your house or school or wherever you work at. But thank God he did the right thing and just unplugged the power source, because that's the only way the hacker is unable to monitor your computer and keeping it on. Which, that is shocking to me, because how in the world can a hacker keep the power on your end on when you're trying to say Control Alt Delete or hit the power button? These guys are getting very clever now. But thankfully, like he said, he deleted the Tor browser off of that computer and he was getting a new monitor. But anyway, let's get to story number 2.
I used to visit the deep web all the time. I have always been into computers, and my friends and I would occasionally visit the deep web out of curiosity when we were younger. One day, I was by myself in a deep web chat room. The chat rooms on the deep web always seemed to entertain me. On this day, I was mostly just watching people talk, but I occasionally would chime in. Then, one of the users in the chat mentioned me. We were having a conversation, but then it turned into a bit of an argument. The other user said something along the lines of that he was going to get me. I assumed he was joking, and I responded with a wisecrack. That made him angry, and he said some more bad things to me. At that point, I was getting kind of uncomfortable, so I decided to leave, and I closed out of everything and logged off.
Okay, right there. I will not even try to engage in conversation with people on the deep web, because there's a bunch of sick individuals that look up that site just to look up any bad videos or photos. So if you take somebody off while in conversation with them in a group chat, they're going to get even. They're going to probably figure out where you live at and then confront you at your house. Oh boy, this ain't good.
About 10 minutes later, I received a text on my phone. It was from an unknown number, and it said, "Why did you leave?" This was pretty creepy, but I knew that there were a lot of skilled hackers that went on the deep web, so I wasn't all that amazed. I decided to ignore the text and hope that he wouldn't contact me again. I figured it was just some guy trying to scare me, and while I have to admit I was a little bit scared, I tried not to let it eat at my brain. A couple of hours later, my phone started ringing. It was an unknown number. I picked it up and answered. There was no voice on the other end, but just breathing. I hung up on them and went back to what I was doing. But a few minutes later, I happened to glance out my front window and noticed there was a car parked in front of my house. I looked to try to see who it was, but from the angle it was parked, and also it being dark outside, I couldn't see.
Oh crap, that guy figured out where you lived at, and he's taunting you since you left the deep web chat. This is why you don't say nothing harsh back to whoever's taunting you on group chat things like that, because they'll seriously back up their word and literally find you. At this point, I'll be calling the cops.
I kept my eye on it over the next few hours. It didn't move at all. Eventually, I tried to get some sleep. I covered all the windows in my house and double-checked all the locks before I went to bed. It took me a long time, but eventually I was able to fall asleep. The next day, I woke up and went to the window to check and see if the car was still there. It was finally gone, and I was relieved. When I went to go on my computer, I turned it on to see that there was already several files open. They were photos. There were a few of my house and my car, and then I saw one of inside my house. Then I saw the worst one of all, which was a photo of me sleeping, taken from inside my house. It looked like it had been taken from my bedroom doorway. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I ran around my house, checking every room, but nobody was in there anymore. I went to my front door and saw that it was unlocked. I have no idea how they were able to get in my house. I am a really deep sleeper, and I guess that was why they didn't wake me up. For the next few days, I was looking over my shoulder every 5 seconds and kept looking out the window to see if the car would return. Everything was fine until about a week later when I woke up in the middle of the night hearing a noise coming from my room. At first I thought I was just imagining things, but then I sat up just in time to see the back of a man walking past my room. This time, I called the police immediately. As I did, I heard the person leaving my house. I had no interest in going after them. The police arrived about 10 minutes later, and I explained the whole thing to them. I know I should have called the police after the first time, but I just felt stupid because it was my own fault for going on the deep web. The police took down the information and said they would patrol the neighborhood over the next few nights. Nothing more happened since, and I won't go on the deep web anymore.
Well, I'm glad you did the right thing and called the cops, but you should have done it earlier because this guy knows that you were a heavy sleeper and he would have took every advantage of coming into the house and taking more photos or trying to steal something from you. Which I would like to know how he got in the house too. If he said that he locked every window and door unless he had like a lock picking set and he was able to get in that way. But I'm glad that this affected him from getting on the deep web anymore. And he knows not to taunt people because they really will be true to their word saying that they were going to get him. Luckily, he didn't get hurt by this dude, but it's shocking to find your computer up with files of your house, car, and him sleeping heavy in his own room. I said, that is creepy.
This story took place a long time ago, sometime in the mid-2000s. I was in high school at the time, and my favorite thing to do after school was play on my computer. I know, I wasn't one of the big popular jocks, but I was a really shy kid, and gaming was always fun for me. I had heard about the deep web, and one day I decided to go on it for the first time. I was pretty good with technology, so I was able to figure out how to get on pretty easily. I visited a couple of websites that were pretty normal, and the more time I spent, the more I was able to find the unusual websites. They were some of the craziest websites I had ever seen. I remember I came across a website that seemed to be filled with puzzles and codes of some sort. I looked at them for about 10 to 15 minutes, and it was pretty interesting to try to understand them. But suddenly, out of nowhere, my fax machine started printing something. When it came out, it was a paper with a large series of numbers on it. I didn't know how this was able to happen. Then it printed another and another. I started to get creeped out, and I took all the rest of the paper out of my printer so that it would stop. My printer kept trying to print things. Then my phone started ringing. It was an old landline, of course, and we didn't have caller ID, so I answered it to see who it was. But all I heard on the other end was a series of beeps and similar noises. I hung up the phone and decided I needed to log off of the deep web. I closed out of the website and turned my computer off. I was pretty shook up from what had happened. Then the phone rang again, and I once again answered because my parents were still gone at work, and I didn't know if it would be them calling. But once again I just heard the noises that I had heard before. I hung up again. The printer was still making noises as well. I ended up unplugging the printer from the wall, and I started to ignore the phone calls that kept coming in. Finally, I decided to unplug the phone from the wall as well. My parents came home from work a little while later, so I plugged the printer and phone back in. I was really hoping that the phone calls and the faxes would not continue. Thankfully, they didn't, and everything went back to normal. However, about 2 weeks later, I received a letter in the mail addressed to me with no return address. When I went inside and opened it up, I saw that it was a paper with more numbers of code. I got extremely freaked out, but thankfully, nothing else happened, and I never got any more faxes, phone calls, or letters. I don't know who or what was behind the letter and the phone calls, but I'm hoping it was just a skilled hacker having some fun.
Yeah, you hope and pray it's a skilled hacker that's just messing with you. Because if it's someone that's dangerous, then you would have a nightmare on your hands. But thankfully, he did the right thing and got off the deep web and never done it again. But that would be crazy that a hacker is able to fax a series of numbers through your fax machine and then send another one through the mail. But thankfully, nothing else happened after that. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications for more Nighttime Spooks content like this. This has been another successful installment of the Tin Man Score channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor. I said that's a wrap, and have a nice day, y'all.